A man named Goring wakes up in a prison and sees his fellow inmate, an old man named Taramagasi. But their prison is not an ordinary one. It is a very tall vertical prison with a hole in the center of each floor, so a person could die if he falls through it. Goring and Taramagasi are on level 48, and since Goring just arrived in this prison, he gets some explanation from Taramagasi, who has already stayed there for months, especially about the food. He explains that food comes placed on a floating table called the platform, and this floating table moves from the top floor to the very bottom every day. In addition to food, inmates can drink water from the tap in each prison cell so they stay hydrated. Each floor has 2 inmates, and because the floating table comes from above, inmates on levels 1, 2, 3, and so on get to eat first. That means the food Goring and Taramagasi eat is the leftovers from the inmates above. There is also a 2-minute time limit for inmates to eat their food, which has made Taramagasi and many others upset for a long time. But he believes if they still stay on a floor above level 50, they will most likely keep getting enough food. So, Taramagasi suggests that they eat as much as they can before the time runs out. After spending a month on one floor, inmates are moved to another floor randomly, so they must keep playing by the rules of this prison until they are declared free. Goring tries to communicate with the inmates above and below, but Taramagasi tells him that the others won't talk because all they care about is eating and getting out. Soon after, the red light in their cell turns green, a sign that the floating table is coming, and Taramagasi immediately starts eating. This disgusts Goring, who sees that the food has already been eaten by others, making him hesitate to eat. So he only takes a single fruit to eat later. When their eating time ends, Taramagasi throws a water bottle down the hole and acts rude. This makes Goring confused by Taramagasi's annoying behavior and suspect that he carries a grudge from past experiences. Not long after, Goring feels the prison cell start to heat up. Taramagasi explains that it is because Goring keeps the apple from earlier, and the temperature will keep rising or falling endlessly unless he throws the apple away. Inmates are not allowed to keep any food taken from the floating table. They must eat it right away. So Goring has no choice but to get rid of the apple. Later, Goring remembers a novel he brings into the prison. Before entering, he is a student who volunteers to enter this prison. His prison sentence is 6 months, and after being released, he will receive a diploma from the university he hasn't graduated from yet. He is also allowed to bring one favorite item, so he chooses the unread novel. At night, when he is about to sleep, Goring hears strong wind from below. He approaches the hole and suddenly sees the floating table rise at high speed, making him realize he must be careful not to lose any body part. The next day, Goring still refuses to eat, while Taramagasi eagerly devours the leftovers. Seeing how long Taramagasi has stayed there, Goring asks why he ended up in prison. Taramagasi reveals that he serves a 1-year sentence after he accidentally ends someone's life. He becomes confused, wondering whether the death is really his fault, and he wishes that person had never been there. Eventually, he is given a choice between a mental hospital or the vertical prison, and he chooses the vertical prison for 1 year. They then talk about the prison floors. Taramagasi guesses that the prison has more than 100 floors since he once stayed on level 132. Goring figures that inmates who don't get any food could die within a month, and they could suffer badly if they get 2 low floors in a row. So he wants to convince the other inmates to share food fairly. But Taramagasi reminds him that the others don't care. When Goring fails to persuade them, Taramagasi becomes angry. He pulls down his pants and releases his fluids toward the inmates below. The next day, Goring begins to eat the food from the table. After finishing his meal, he sees that Taramagasi has a knife, something he brings from outside the prison. Suddenly, an inmate from above falls down through the hole. Taramagasi assumes the person becomes too stressed after drinking. This angers Goring, who feels upset with how the other inmates have stopped caring for one another. Taramagasi then explains that when someone dies, a new inmate will replace them. Goring remembers Taramagasi once stayed on level 132, so he asks what happens to his previous cellmate. Taramagasi doesn't answer, and Goring suspects that they didn't get any food on that floor. But strangely, Taramagasi doesn't seem starved when Goring first meets him. Taramagasi doesn't care much about the accusation and still kindly invites Goring to eat when the food arrives, along with a mysterious woman named Miharu who sits on the table. Taramagasi warns Goring not to care about Miharu, because she is looking for her child in the vertical prison. Every month, she keeps traveling to search and search. He adds that before she descends, she ends her cellmate's life to improve her chances of being with her child next month. Goring wants to help Miharu, but she refuses his help before continuing her descent to the next floor. Soon, the inmates below try to harass her. Goring wants to help but hesitates to jump, realizing the height is about 6 meters. However, Miharu manages to fight back and ends the lives of the 2 inmates using a sharp object. After learning more about the vertical prison, Goring continues serving his time as usual. As time passes, his relationship with Taramagasi grows closer. One day, while they are about to sleep, they begin to smell gas in their cell. Taramagasi tells him that the gas always comes every month, which makes them fall asleep quickly, and the next day they will wake up on a different floor. Taramagasi admits that he has only 2 months left until he can be free, and he also admits that he likes Goring for being kind-hearted. This makes Goring feel happy, but the happiness soon disappears the next day when he realizes his body is tied up like a mummy on the bed, something that turns out to be done by Taramagasi while Goring sleeps very soundly. This happens because they move to a very low floor, floor 171, a bad sign that they will not get any leftover food from above. Goring just finds this out, and that's why Taramagasi quickly ties up Goring's body so he can eat Goring's flesh, who is younger and stronger than him. Taramagasi says that hunger can drive people insane, so in cases like this, the choice is either to eat or be eaten. As a result, Goring starts screaming, along with the other prisoners who realize they have landed on a very bad floor, and they end up doing unimaginable things. When the floating platform arrives on Goring and Taramagasi's floor, they see that all the food is truly gone, not even bones are left. This makes Taramagasi even more determined to eat Goring. Goring tries to convince Taramagasi that they can survive on water, and Taramagasi thinks maybe Goring can, but he himself is old, so he must focus on getting out within 2 months, that is, if they don't end up moving to an even lower floor. Still, Taramagasi doesn't plan to eat Goring immediately because he wants to save the meat and eat it only when he's really starving. That's why he decides to wait 8 days before starting to eat. During those 8 days, Goring tries to escape, but in the end, he struggles to break free from the restraints on the bed. Finally, the moment arrives for Taramagasi to eat Goring, starting by cutting his thigh. Once he manages to get some flesh, someone hits his head. It turns out to be Miharu. She quickly grabs Taramagasi's fallen knife and frees Goring, then gives him the knife so he can take revenge. Once Goring is free, he crawls toward Taramagasi, who lies on the floor, and stabs him several times, and finally, he dies. After Goring wakes up from passing out, he sees Miharu calmly eating Taramagasi, and she even shares the meat with Goring by giving him a small piece. Once Goring feels better, Miharu continues her journey to find her child, while Goring keeps eating Taramagasi while waiting for the time to move. One day, he starts hallucinating and sees Taramagasi appear in his vision. Goring knows that Taramagasi is not real, but he doesn't think too much about it, because what matters now is that Taramagasi is inside him and will never leave. As they keep talking, Goring smells the gas starting to fill the room. So after falling asleep, he wakes up on a much better floor this time, floor 33, where he is paired with a female prisoner named Imagiri, along with her dog. As Goring looks at Imagiri, he remembers that she is one of the prison officials who once interviewed him before he entered the vertical prison. Back then, she explained the rules of the prison and asked about his favorite foods so they could be added to the menu. But at that time, he didn't know how cruel the vertical prison could be. Now Goring understands the bitter reality of this place, so he asks Imagiri to get him out, but she says she can't because she is now considered a prisoner herself. However, this is not punishment from the prison authorities, it's her own decision because of a personal reason. Since Imagiri is a former prison official, Goring asks how many floors the prison actually has. Imagiri answers that there are 200 floors. Goring says the food supply isn't enough for 200 floors, but Imagiri believes if everyone eats only what they need, the food should reach the very bottom floor. When it's time for them to eat, Imagiri only takes a small portion and asks Goring to do the same. This reminds him of Miharu's child, who must be starving somewhere. But Imagiri says that, as far as she knows, people under 16 are not allowed in the prison, because she believes the prison system is very strict. When they finish eating, Imagiri asks the 2 prisoners on the floor below to take only what they need so others can also eat. Of course, the 2 prisoners don't listen, because they are barely surviving. Still, Imagiri doesn't give up that day, and continues begging them to be fair the next day, and the day after, and the day after that. Tired of the selfishness of the prisoners below, Goring becomes angry and threatens to defecate on the food every day if they don't cooperate. One day, Goring and Imagiri find Miharu lying injured on the platform, apparently attacked by the prisoners above while she tries to search for her child. So Goring and Imagiri help her until they notice that their cell begins to get cold. It turns out this happens because Imagiri's dog takes food from the platform. Goring quickly grabs the food and throws it away. While everyone is asleep, Miharu suddenly wakes up and stares at Imagiri's dog. Sometime later, Imagiri gets furious with Miharu for doing something horrible. Apparently, Miharu has killed and eaten her dog, which makes Imagiri feel devastated. But Goring thinks Miharu does it so she can stay alive and continue looking for her missing child. This is the first time Imagiri realizes that Miharu has a child because she believes Miharu came alone and volunteered to be a prisoner, just like Goring. As a result, Imagiri feels guilty because previously she wasn't informed by the prison authorities about the true situation and condition of the vertical prison. So, unknowingly, she has been sending people into hell all this time. To make Goring trust her more, Imagiri reveals that she has been battling cancer for 3 years. And when she realizes she has lost the fight, she chooses to become a prisoner so she can help the others, but now she no longer cares. On the last day before they move to another floor, Goring, as usual, eats his food modestly, but not Imagiri, who has lost her appetite. And they don't realize that this is their last day to enjoy decent food, because the next day, they wake up on a horrible floor, floor 202. When Goring wakes up, he is shocked to find something unexpected. Imagiri has taken her own life by doing something unimaginable. As a result, Goring experiences hallucinations again, where he meets Taramagasi, who tells him to eat Imagiri, and Imagiri herself agrees to let him eat her body. That's why he does something unthinkable. This makes Goring feel overwhelmed by what's going on in his mind, so he keeps resisting what Taramagasi and Imagiri tell him. But in the end, Goring can't resist his hunger anymore, and he ends up having no choice but to eat Imagiri. Sometime later, Goring wakes up on a good floor, which is level 6, where his new cellmate is a man named Baharat. Realizing they are close to the top floor, Baharat plans to escape using a rope he has, and he asks the 2 inmates above for help. The 2 inmates agree, so Baharat throws the rope for them to hold so he can climb it. But it turns out they betray him by throwing a poop, causing him to slip and fall along with the rope into the hole, and in the end, he fails to escape. When sleep time arrives, an idea appears in Goring's mind to escape the prison by using the floating platform that will rise from the bottom floor to the very top, aiming to break the system of the vertical prison he hates. His mind gets disturbed by the appearances of Taramagasi and Imagiri in his vision, who remind him that he will be free in a month. But in the end, he still chooses to destroy the prison system by asking Baharat to go down together with him. Besides going down, they also plan to distribute food starting from floor 51, because floors 50 and above always get food and can eat again the next day. So they prioritize sharing food with the inmates below floor 50. Once the plan is ready, their struggle to descend begins, using metal parts from the bed as weapons to fend off troublesome inmates. On floor 7, Baharat meets the same 2 inmates who once helped him try to climb. But when one of them tries to snatch the food, Baharat is forced to stop him. They then continue their journey in the same way, and several floors later, Baharat meets his senior friend, known as the Wise Man, who likes to give him good advice. The Wise Man advises Goring and Baharat to speak kindly when convincing the inmates, but if they refuse to cooperate, only then should Goring and Baharat fight them. Besides that, the Wise Man believes that Goring and Baharat won't succeed if they only rely on themselves, because the management has no conscience. So there needs to be something that serves as a protest against the vertical prison system. The Wise Man suggests a dish that's easy to carry as a message of protest, a white pudding. He believes the dish will shock the management because they surely think that their food always runs out in the prison. Finding this idea reasonable, Goring and Baharat start carrying the pudding and begin to speak nicely to the inmates about their goal. But when an inmate refuses to cooperate, Goring and Baharat don't hesitate to stop them. When they finally reach floor 51 and below, they begin to distribute food to the inmates there. But when they reach even deeper floors, they see an inmate who has already died, assuming Miharu must have woken up on this floor and killed the inmate. At the same time, the floating platform refuses to stop, so they realize it won't stop if there are no living inmates. A few floors later, they see Miharu being tortured by a big inmate, who then stabs her several times with a knife. There is also another inmate who holds a sword, So Goring and Baharat try to fight the two inmates and eventually defeat them. Unfortunately, Miharu already died, so before Goring can do anything, he has to return to the platform, which has already gone down. Despite being severely wounded from the previous fight, they keep descending many floors, thinking the platform will stop somewhere below floor 202. But the platform continues to descend until it finally stops at floor 333, a sign that someone is still alive there. It turns out the one who is still alive is the little girl Miharu has been looking for all along. So Goring and Baharat want to save the girl. But the platform has already gone down, and there's nothing underneath anymore, indicating that floor 333 is the last level. At first, they want to place the pudding on the platform, but after realizing that the prison cell isn't heating up or freezing anymore, they get the chance to save the starving girl. At first, they hesitate to share the pudding, which is supposed to be the symbol of protest, but after feeling pity for the girl, they change their mind. As a result, the girl finally eats well on the lowest floor, and Goring and Baharat feel happy with their decision. Sometime later, the platform returns to the top floor while Goring and the others fall asleep on this floor. Then Goring dreams about Miharu pointing at the girl and Baharat telling him that the pudding is not the real message, but the girl is. Goring believes this, but first, he checks on Baharat, who hasn't woken up, but it turns out Baharat is not asleep but has already died due to blood loss from his previous wounds. Still, Goring doesn't give up. So when the platform arrives, he carries the girl to ride the platform, and it brings them down into a dark, endless hole. So the girl doesn't get scared. Goring comforts her with love until they finally reach the bottom. After seeing the hole above that looks like a beam of light, Goring experiences another hallucination of Taramagasi walking toward him, telling him that Goring's journey is over. At first, he wants to go up with the girl, but Taramagasi says the girl is already the message, and she doesn't need a messenger. Goring understands this, so he chooses to step off the platform, and he and Taramagasi walk into the darkness. The movie ends with Goring seeing the girl for the last time, and finally, she rises to the very top floor, hoping the management will finally receive the message. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notification so you don't miss the latest recaps. Thanks for watching and wish you good health.